Um, I decided to put together a slightly different slide deck for the second part of this, and it's going to be an interesting thing to look at. I'm also going to use my own computer so that I know it works. That's not true. I'm just being obnoxious and complicated. I want to talk about a slightly different topic. I was going to try and find something funny or interesting to talk about. This will be neither. I wanted to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, maybe a little away from cloud computing, so bear with me. I want to talk about the other war on general purpose computing. Once upon a time, computers did everything. But we didn't expect computers to be everywhere. And what I mean by this is that in the early days, computers were really boring. I mean, you fed them a punched card and they spat out an actuarial table. Not very interesting. ENIAC didn't have DRM or constraints on what it could do because it didn't have spare compute power, and we didn't really think of it as a very interesting device. Computing power was scarce, and we never really expected computers to be cool. Consider this story about a sound effect between two companies named Apple. When Apple Computer emerged, Apple Records, the Beatles records label, tried to sue them. And Apple Computer said, "We promise not to get into the music business." Because after all, this isn't a musical instrument, right? Well, guess what? Today, Apple makes musical instruments. This is an Akai keyboard that actually takes an iPad as a synth. And this was a pretty adversarial relationship. You may not know this, but the sound effect on your Mac that goes dunk, I did that really well, is called Sosumi. And this is not an accident. This is intentionally renamed Sosumi from Chime as a shot across the bow of Apple Records. Now, eventually they worked everything out, they shared some money, and now you can get the Beatles on iTunes. But it tells us a lesson that today a computer is not just a computer, it's a book, it's a synthesizer, it's a video production tool, it's a factory. Computers can do anything to content. Making copies of things, distributing those things, and giving other people the tools to make those copies. And this is a problem for Hollywood and other people who make their money on content. So get ready for a really big fight. Because content creators make money from scarcity, and content consumers want it free and now. We've been here before. In the early days of the printing press, Cardinal John Henry Newman said, "Books make it too easy to learn, so people won't value learning. For what the steam engine does with books, the printing press is to do with the mind." Fast forward a few years, maybe not in thinking, but certainly in time, 38-year-old MPAA President Jack Valenti compared the VCR to the Boston Strangler. Today, his organization makes more than half of their money from DVDs and VCRs. But this fight was different, because this fight was digital, and bits are frictionless. It is Valentine's Day, after all. And so when Apple puts out a computer ad that says, "You can rip, mix, and burn," people get understandably angry. Copying went nuclear, and this is a problem. It's time for a nuclear arms race between the people who own content and the people who actually want to consume it. And so we started out with things like dongles, right? These little devices you'd put on the back of stuff to enable your computer, these silly dial-a-pirate games in your software that allowed you to prove you bought a legitimate copy, floppy disks that were intentionally damaged with a hole so that you could check whether they were damaged in the right place to see if it was a copy, encryption, all kinds of DRM stuff on content. There was an arms race going on here to try and give these bits atomic properties, put the genie back in the bottle. And the hackers had their way with them, and guess who won? Well, because the hackers had root, they were able to get at the content. But it's not just that. The copy was better because the copy didn't force us to use a dongle or some silly reader thing to prove we had the manual, or to sit there and watch this stupid warning that I can't skip through, even though I'm the one that bought a legitimate copy of the movie. The legitimate users suffered. Reasonably priced alternatives emerged. Apple took DRM off the MP3s and their sales went up. Monty Python put all its videos on YouTube and their sales went through the roof. The free market had spoken, right? Well, it's time for another round. Because the internet is made of layers, and we can work at any of those layers. If I want to copy something from a document, because my browser comes from one organization, and my computer from another, and the OS from another, and the content from another, I have options about what I do with that content. I can issue an HTTP request and pull down the content and paste it and copy it. A GIF doesn't have an opinion about how it should be used. So legislators got involved. SOPA and PIPA are stupid, stupid things made by people who want to try and roll back the clock and resist change. In Canada, we have it even worse. C11 is actually going to criminalize attempts to lock break and make all your PVRs illegal. These people want to hold back the clock. Everything I've said so far has been much better said by Cory Doctorow in an amazing blog post called Lockdown. Please go and read it. But there's something else going on. There is a war underway on general purpose computing, and content creators have a new ally in their fight. It's us and the fact that we're really lazy. We want it to be so easy. So we can watch TV on computers and play games on computers and make calls on computers and drive our computers. We cripple computers in the name of simplicity, limiting what they can do. After all, you could get root on a speak and spell, but you try and change your portable game device and it bricks itself. And this is scary because in tomorrow's world, content is software, is devices. A book is not a book, it's an application. Content has opinions about how it can be used and where it can be used. And sure, letting people do what they want is really, really messy. So yeah, we lock things down. I mean, locks make computers simpler to use. We wouldn't be here if all the non-technical people couldn't also afford technology, so there was a big market for it. Because simplicity, and yes, it's the second time you've seen this meme in 10 minutes. Thank you, Jesse. Simplicity has allowed us to connect everything in our lives, our tablets, our mobile devices, and so on. And the reality is that when the number of people that use something goes up, necessarily what those things can do gets diminished, so it's simple. And I can watch a movie on my iPad, but I can't watch that movie on anything I want. Apple removed the app that would let you watch any video you wanted, called VLC, from the App Store. You could download stuff, copy it to your iPad, watch it anywhere, take it off your iPad, watch it anywhere. That app was removed. If you're lucky enough to have installed it, you still have it. If not, you're out of luck. You got to use their tools. Today we share at the pleasure of the app. Imagine I have something in Facebook on my iPad, find a story I want to share. I got to open it in Safari, take that URL or copy the URL, open Mail, and send it to someone. Because this app has opinions about how I can use its content. No more copy and paste unless the app says so. I can't get inside my iPad because I can't get root. And today, that's content. But tomorrow, it could be your hearing aid. Or it could be the Thingiverse choosing what you'd like to print. But I'm sorry, that mangasm in the top right corner, really, it's called a mangasm. It's Valentine's Day after all, may not be available in your country because a religious leader said so. This is a scary world. You think this is science fiction, try scanning a banknote into Photoshop. You'll get an error message saying that Photoshop does not support the editing of currency. It's been built in there for several releases. I believe root is a right. Freedom of root is increasingly equivalent to freedom of speech, and we should probably wake up to this. Because it's not only consumer devices that erode our right to root, it's clouds. We want clouds that just work, and as a result, we give up cloud computing, we give up root so easily, and this is a slippery slope to a world in which we cannot control our own destinies. Because the future where computers take over is not a future of Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's a future of WALL-E. And we're just lazy, and we sit back and let the computer do all the work for us and take away our options. And by the way, if this gets uploaded, those last 2 slides, it's getting taken down without my permission. In cloud computing, we are moving up the stack from hardware to the hypervisor, all the way up to software as a service. And dealing with those machines, as I said this morning, is a bad thing. It gets in the way of delivery and scalability and efficiency. All that stuff that you've heard about comes at a price. And the price is giving up options. Every time we take a step towards away from root and towards ease of use, we take a step away from general purpose computing. The downside of not knowing how the sausage is made is no new sausages. It's a sausage monopoly. It's no say in the content of your sausages, because giving up complexity means giving up options. And again, we are on a slippery slope towards clouds of loving grace, a world where we are coddled by systems and don't have the right to use them. So I would like to call on all of you to defend your right to root, your right to content, your right to schema, to export, to open, your right to meddle. We saw a tremendous Cambrian explosion of diversity in technical devices over the last 50 years. It's the reason we have jobs. But if we're not careful, if we don't insist on that right to root, we're going to see a few very large monopolies and very little control over our lives. The future doesn't need us to be able to poke around in the stack, but if we want a future, we need to be able to demand it anyway, because freedom of computing is a human right. There is a war on general purpose computing underway, and I would like to ask all of you to join the fight for it. Thank you very much.